Hi there. My name's Fury in Stormridge, and a few Fridays ago, Yoshi P came out on the live letter and told us about the new entry method for the Fork Tower sequel. A lot of people are saying it's scuffed, it's certainly cursed, but to me, and I think to a lot of people out there, it's the best of both worlds. So, have a seat, come on in, and let's talk about it. What's going on? So, if you're unaware, the original Fork Tower entry method was you have an open world raid inside of the zone called the Fork Tower, inside of your Occult Crescent duty. The way that you entered was by going and standing in a single spot, putting a cipher in, which is a little thing you buy with currency, and then hopefully you get chosen. You can put in more than one cipher, but it doesn't go with who put in the most and down. What it does is it goes, all right, you put in 2. When we roll for the lottery, we're going to roll your number twice. So you got sniped all the time. Look, I get the griefing with snipers. I do. But there's a lot of reasons why people like having the raid inside the instance, and we're going to talk about them. So with the new method, the way that they're going about it is you enter Occult Crescent, and Fork Tower will be there like a Castrum or a Dalrida or Dalriada, whatever the fuck it's called. So when you go in there, you've got your normal difficulty raid, or before you go in, you put together your pre-made alliance like you do for Delubrum Regine Savage or for the current Fork Tower, and you check a little box. Now this feature was actually added into the base version, the first Occult Crescent zone, where when you queue up, you check a little box, and you get a private instance all to you and your Alliance raid self. Now, what are the changes they made? Well, 2 difficulties. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm a guy that loves the Baldesion Arsenal. I think it's the best piece of content in the game's history. I'm incredibly fucking biased, and we're going to dig into that in a little bit. But first, there's a lot of concerns I have when they add multiple difficulties, specifically because they tend to make things a little bit too hard if they give you a savage difficulty, and they tend to make things just abysmal dog shit if they then make an easy baby version of it. And I mean both abysmal dog shit in terms of rewards and the actual gameplay loop. Something around the EX level of difficulty seems like the sweet spot, such as the existing Fork Tower or the Baldesion Arsenal. But again, we'll get into that. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a history lesson. So, those are your new entry methods. BA's method is, it's...
Oh, beautiful.
Swift.
Get away from it.
Swift. Got it.
It's different, it's unique, but it's the same principle. It's a big open world raid dungeon inside your instance thing, and you go inside, you get like an EX level difficulty 48 person raid. Now, BA didn't get nearly the level of negative feedback that Fork Tower Blood did because, well, when you go in there, you got 48 people to 56 that are going in a zone that is capped to 144 people. That means that 96 will be left inside the instance when you go in, and 48 will go in. So 1/3 of the instance goes in. That also means that you have to queue in simultaneously with all 6 of your parties if you don't have that alliance raid or that whole alliance queue-in feature to create a new instance. And you have to win the lottery of getting an instance where you get all 6 parties, all 48 people in at once. Now that is a challenge and is kind of bullshit. But it's a lot more bullshit when the instance cap is 72, and the number of excess bodies that you can have that are not in your alliance raid go from 96 in the case of Eureka Hydados to 24? I want to say 24. Yeah, 24. 24 people. So you have 1/3 the amount of overlap people, and instead of 1/3 of the instance population going into the raid, 2/3 are now going into the raid, which means the rest of the instance is, it's just kind of dead. Anyway, getting back to the new Fork Tower entry method. once you go in, you check a box, like right before you press the Q button, and you'll get an extreme version of the instance. And what does that mean? It means that the instance is exactly the same, except the very first Forked Tower raid that pops up will be the extreme difficulty, and all future ones will spawn as the normal baby Weenie Hut Juniors version of the content. Now, I really, really like this, because I want a BA sequel. Delubrum Regine's not, we're going to get into that. And I would love to have a castrum in the instance. I'd like to have a dungeon that I could do with randos when my brain is mush, and I'd also like something that keeps me at least slightly more engaged in what I'm doing, but anyway. So, why do they insist on having the raid inside the instance? Why don't we just have a Q button to just pop on in? Well, it's very simple. It's because they don't know why we love Eureka, and they are copying Eureka. They're not copying Bosja. Now, you might be thinking, but Bosja was the best, iteration of this. Was it? Was it? So, I thought to myself, as someone that runs a very large amount of Baldesion Arsenal, and yes, I did do Delubrum Regine on patch. Shout out to the etards over on EU. We actually put together a run where we only had DPS jobs in and cleared Delubrum Regine Savage on patch. That's 5.45. That was when you had to queue in with 48. You couldn't queue in with 24. That was when you had a max resistance rank of 15. You didn't have the funny metal stacking buffs that you get from Zadnor. Zadnor wasn't even out. You didn't have the Zadnor actions. Point being, I did it, and I did it at its fucking hardest. And I'm very proud of what we achieved, and it wasn't a Nightmare Prague. I'm not super proud, but I'm proud enough. I got a 60 on the Queen and like 98 plus on the other bosses, and at my best, we killed those other bosses a lot. That was a long fucking Prague. But anyway, it was good content. In fact, I would say that Delubrum Regine Savage was my favorite content of Shadowbringers. The expansion that is second only to Endwalker in terms of the lack of content because of the because of what was going on at the time in the world. Now, you might be thinking, but Mr. Stormrage, how on earth could that be true? Do you have any numbers? Do you have any evidence? Do you have any data to back up this crackpot theory that the Baldesion Arsenal is exponentially more popular than Delubrum Regine Savage? Why, yes. Yes, I do. If you're anything like me, and you frequent the FF logs, if you go to that website often, you will know that there's a database of any parse that's been uploaded for Delubrum Regine Savage and for Forked Tower. But they hadn't really figured out even the scuffed attempt to parse 48 to 56 people in an open world instance at once back in Stormblood. So there is no actual ranking for the Baldesion Arsenal in FF logs. Now there are tens of thousands of parses up there, and I know that because I've put up more than 1,000 of them myself, of the Baldesion Arsenal, but there's no way to go through that, look at statistics, go through all the logs, and say how many people are running BA these days. So I was sort of at a roadblock for quite a long time. Then I had a revelation. I had a brilliant thought. I run so much BA that I could probably just go look in all the DRS logs for the last 2 weeks not at time of recording, but like a week ago as of time of recording. Today's March 27th. It was last Friday. I went and looked at the last 14 days of DRS clears. And then I went and looked inside of each and every one of those logs to rule out duplicates. So in other words, if 2 people cleared in the same run and then uploaded them immediately, you could see it. So I went through and filtered every single DRS clear for the last 2 weeks in FF logs and came up with a grand total of... You ready? You ready? It was 20. 20 clears. Now in these 20 clears, it was actually like 15, except there was this like one the log with the red V over it. Yeah, that there was 5 logs in there. They were all the same day. So anyway, 20. I mean, now, to a lot of folks out there, if you're not an insider, if you're not, somebody that runs the Baldesion Arsenal, or Delubrum Regine Savage, or, honestly, even if you're not even Fork Tower regulars might not be surprised by these numbers, but if you're just, someone that does content when it's current, those numbers might surprise you, or that might even sound high. The server that I run BA on has cleared BA way more than 20 times in the last 2 weeks. And before you go, well, what if these people aren't uploading their logs? You got 48 fucking people that are clearing. And that also means that the people that care about parsing it have 20 or 30 backpacks, potentially, to pad their parse. Yeah, that's another thing that's a total tangent, but somebody told me that Delubrum Regine Savage was easier than the Baldesion Arsenal now, and frankly, I kind of just fucking burst out in laughter at him because that sounded absurd. And then I watched someone do it. This shit is insane. Anybody can get backpack through it. I've said for years that anybody can clear BA, anybody can be a productive member of a BA run. You don't have to do anything to clear DRS now. You just sign up and you will get carried. It's that fucking easy. Now, I'm not complaining. I thought DRS was way too hard for the average player to learn and run throughout most of Shadowbringers and beyond, but I was just genuinely shocked to hear that this thing that was marketed as a Stormblood series of EX trials is now a little teensy-weensy bit more difficult than the Shadowbringers thing with 48 players that has the Savage moniker in it. So, in going through all of those runs and coming up with the number 20, I came to the realization that I personally clear BA almost as much as the rest of the global BA scene. And there are 12 other Discords, so 13 total, that run BA that I'm aware of. Again, those are just the ones I'm aware of. And yes, not last Saturday, but the Saturday before it, there was a 24-hour BA marathon with 12 runs from 12 different Discords from around the world coming together on Oceania. And I'm only saying that because if you're a real head and you you're deep into the scene, you know about that phenomenal event, shout out to Eric Taylor, that was fucking phenomenal. Then you might be going, well, you cherry-picked, didn't you? You picked you picked the 2-week period that had the annual BA anniversary, 12 runs in a day run. I wasn't counting any of those runs, despite the fact I hosted one of them and attended 2 others, though I did count the fourth run that I was on that day, which we hosted on Cafe. BA is being ran a lot more than Delubrum Regine Savage. In fact, Eureka kind of carries this game whenever there's no content to do. That's where people go back to. That's where people return. It's awesome content. So, why is that the case?
Everything burns! Light it up, let's go! Light it up, let's go! Everything burns! Light it up, let's go! Light it up!
So, why is Eureka better than Bozja? Now, we're going to be getting into some territory that is, strictly this individual's opinion, so just going to give you the big, super massive warning that there's going to be some citations, there's going to be some works cited, but we're mostly we're operating off of opinions here. Though they're just wait and see. Okay, they're not that out there. All right. So the first thing is theory crafting. In Bozja, sure, you've got theory crafting. You can combine actions. The Flare Star cheese was kind of epic. Now a lot of folks go out and they go, that whole Flare Star cheese is that is fucking disgusting. But I look at it and go, that's brilliant. That is awesome. That is exactly the sort of shit I want to see in my exploration content. Eureka had one big problem with theory crafting. Only one, really. Just one big one. There was no fucking striking dummies. There weren't even, like, you need striking dummies of different elemental levels and of different elemental aspect, but there was nothing to test with. You had to just go into BA or go to a level 65 enemy and test shit out. Bosja, when the moment I walked in to the Boston Southern Front for the first time on the release day in 5.35, I saw something. It was like an oasis in a desert, seeing the line of striking dummies. And then Delubrum Regine Savage came out. You remember that? You remember that? You remember what Delubrum Regine gave us? It gave us fucking pure essences that only work in Delubrum Regine, well, normal or savage. But it meant that the striking dummies inside of the instance no longer allowed you to experiment and test loadouts for the fucking raid. So that was a pretty big bummer. The actions inside of Delubrum Regine aren't, I mean, okay, so there's been a lot of nerfs and now you can bring other stuff, but on launch, there wasn't any creativity. There's very, very minimal creativity, other than the traditional creativity of this game, which is coming up with new strats and optimizing around uptime, which is all well and good, but sometimes, once in a while, some folks, hi, it's me, I'm some folks, would like to theory craft around more than just where to stand when fighting the boss, like with gear and action loadouts and that sort of stuff. Launch DRS just didn't really have it, and the reason for that was those pure essences gave you just so much health and defense that if you didn't have them equipped, you were just going to get like 1 or 2 tapped by raid wides and doing mechanics correctly. So it was sort of the oh yeah, and they also had the hidden actions like sometimes tanks could sack and they wouldn't die, and the only way that you could raise was with healers with the funny healer pure essence spamming Arise. Ranged Fizz could cast Cure 2 on you and then give you a mana regen and a slow for themselves. They gave themselves a slow when they buffed you. That was their hidden superpower. It's the dumbest shit ever. Basically, you didn't really have the freedom to put together a custom loadout when you went into Delubrum Regine Savage. The actions in Eureka are way stronger than the actions in Bosja, because they work in ways the developers didn't intend. When you go into Bosja and you see you get a spot for your wisdom, that's essence to the folks out there that you played Bosja but didn't play the Eureka content. When you go out there and you see that you can just use an essence and get a permanent buff, and then change your action loadout without messing with your essence, that was super cool. That was hype. I was like, whoa, that's brilliant. It gave you the illusion of creativity, when in fact you had none. When I say these actions are more powerful, let's look at Focus. Focus is a staple for any Eureka enjoyer. What does Focus do? Well, it's a GCD ability. So it's always 2.5 seconds, which kind of sucks because you're carrying all that Eureka and haste or Boston or whatever. So 2.5 GCD. And when you use it, it gives you a buff that stacks up to 16 times. And what that does is, each stack provides more damage to your next weapon skill. So, you know, you stack it up 16, do a bunch of damage. How much is a stack? Well, in Bosja, it's 15%. In Eureka, it's fucking 30. There was an entire period in Shadowbringers where the optimal bard, well, all of Shadowbringers, where the optimal bard rotation in Baldesion Arsenal was, I'm going to put my dots on the boss, and then my rotation is focus. Focus, 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 focus. Okay, the dots are about to fall off. Iron Jaws to consume my focus stacks, and then continue to stack focus again. And to some extent, when you've got like 40 seconds or less on tech step as a dancer, you can also just kind of replace your whole fucking rotation with focus. There's a lot of creativity, and partially, in no small part, due to how powerful these actions are. When Delubrum Regine was designed, it felt like the developers knew exactly what we would be bringing in and wanted us to bring in exactly what they had prepared for us to bring in. When you go into BA, it's, well, we're gonna clown in that motherfucker. But, you know, I feel like you get the point about actions. There's probably something I'm forgetting. There's probably the Furtive Pygmy. Double Edge. What is double edge? Is bro really about to talk about double edge in a video about the fork tower entry method? You're fucking right, I am. What's double edge do? It gives you a dot. You put it on yourself. It's a 48-second buff that gives you 15% more physical damage dealt every 3 seconds. You get a stack. So like, you know, it's like 41 seconds after popping it, you'll have like 14 stacks. What is a stack? It's 15% more physical damage. So it's 16 stacks, you're doing 240% additional damage, or you're at 340% total damage dealt. But it also has that dot tick, and that dot tick ramps up, and it's doing over a third of your HP. It's about 35-40% of your HP if you're a melee. If you're a tank, it's like anywhere from like 27% to like fucking 10. So it's, you know, you need a healer to just heal you constantly if you're doing it on a melee DPS. As a tank, you just man mode that shit. But you're probably thinking, well, that's all well and good, except it only lasts 48 seconds, and you really only got about 6 seconds of the full damage buff before it falls out. Well, that's where you're wrong. What you do is, right as it's about to fall off, you open up a new pair of actions, one of which needs to be double edge, and press double edge again, and that will reset the duration while keeping your stacks. That means that you can just live indefinitely in a state of doing plus 240% damage. Damage is multiplicatively stacking in this game, by the way. So if you combine it with your 40% Wisdom of the Martialist or Duelist, you're now doing 476% damage. I'm just going to round up and say it's 5x, and you're doing that just indefinitely. The only problem is you probably have a healer that's whole job is just to make sure you don't fucking kill yourself just by existing. Am I forgetting any? I mean, there's Eagle Eye Shot, which is most jobs in this game have an opener. An opener. It's when all the buffs line up. It's when you use all your big cooldowns. It's typically when you look at the parse, you see this big at the start, and then you get, like, you know, every 60 or every 120 fucking seconds. Fuck the 2-minute meta. So, with all that in mind, Eagle Eye Shot breaks the mold, fundamentally. Because jobs in this game don't really have a closer anymore. There's no real assassination skills. There's no skills that you're intended to use, not in your opener, but to finish off the enemy. So what does Eagle Eye Shot do? Well, it's 80 potency. And it scales up to 880, depending on how much HP the enemy you are shooting at is missing. It's based on their HP percentage. Only ranged Fizz can use it. So it's 800 potency when the boss, we'll say, has 10% HP left. So you just replace all of your GCDs with that. As a bard, you just continue to use your OGCDs, maybe keep your dots up depending on how low the boss is, and just replace your rotation with that. Machinist, same thing, but obviously Machinist does a little bit more damage. So Machinist doesn't replace its whole rotation with that until it gets, you know, pretty low. Bard can start Eagle Eye Shotting at, like, I don't know, 70%. We're getting distracted. There's one thing I forgot to mention about this skill, though. You're not gonna believe me, it's hilarious. It's a fucking tomahawk. It's got an enmity generator on it, so range Fizz just end up getting spanked constantly. But it's really funny, and it does a lot of damage, so it's fine. Now, you don't have anything quite like that in Deluded Regine Savage. Their closest attempt was Wisdom of the Irregular, Essence of the Irregular, which was based off of Wisdom of the Irregular from Eureka. Wisdom of the Irregular in Eureka reduces your magic defense by 60%, increases all damage dealt by 30%, and can be used by anyone that isn't a tank. Maybe not healers either. I don't know off the top of my head. So, why am I bringing up Irregular? Well, they used it in Bosja. It's 200% more damage dealt, or 60, 80. It's like 100. I think the deep version's 108% more damage dealt, and it reduces your max HP. And you take triple damage, and it's tank only. So it can be really fun in, you know, the zones. But if you bring that into Deluded Regine Savage, if you're not the duelist, you're probably gonna get just deleted. Now, that could be different now. I haven't been into Deluded Regine Savage myself since Shadowbringers, and in the runs and bogs that I've watched of people doing it lately, they're not exactly, we'll say, you know, veterans looking to expand their horizons. Getting back to theory crafting. I think we've talked enough about the actions. Let's go on to gear. Gear. Eureka's gear is the best way that gear or relics have ever been done in this game. How does the gear work? You have an elemental system that is a flat percentage multiplier modifier for all damage dealt or received while inside of Eureka, while inside of BA. That's what your wheel thingy does, the Magia wheel. That elemental stat that's on your gear, it's like giving you bonus Magia in all of your elements at once. It's incredibly powerful, including the elements that you have your Magia in. It is the only, and I do mean the only gear that you can notice the difference when you equip in this game, aside from GCD speed. Because let's be real, this game is stale as fuck. The difference between the crafted raid gear with no materia and optimally melded best in slot savage gear, it's a huge difference in terms of your kill time, if your whole raid has it, but in terms of you doing any form of content with randoms, you're never gonna notice the difference in gear aside from your damage meter that doesn't exist in this game, right? But seriously, you're never going to notice, if you're not parsing, you're never going to notice the difference in the damage you take or the damage that you dish out just from going from crafted gear to raid bis. Meanwhile, in Eureka, the difference between going from 5 Magia and no elemental gear to 7 Magia and full elemental gear is going to Pago, or is going to Animos, looking at all of the ghosts for Pazuzu prep and thinking, you know, as a warrior, I'm pretty sure I can fight one of those. I can pull one of those myself, I can solo that myself, and I can kill it. I can solo prep Pazuzu. Mostly thanks to this echo. If you come back there with 7 Magia and full gear, the equation changes a little bit. It goes from, I think I can solo one, to, I think it would be better design if there were more than 12 of these ghosts here, because I want to fight more than 12 at a time, because I can just fucking pull them all. I want to murder all their friends, too. The gear difference in getting a gear reward in Eureka versus getting a gear reward anywhere else in this game is, like, unrecognizable. It's in-fucking-sane. Let's talk about eye level sync a little bit as well while we're here. Now, if maybe you don't care, you're probably not the Giga Turbo whatever nerd that myself and the other masochistic shitters that run BA and Fork Tower all the time are. But it's something that you can min-max, it's something you can optimize, and it's something that can set you apart from everyone else. So, in Bosja, you may or may not have noticed, if you equip a set of level 1 gear, you're fine. You're actually totally fine. It's like the old deep dungeon system before they kind of made it better, where you just get credit for having something in a slot. So as long as you've got gear in that slot, you will get pre-assigned stats. Imagine if you had a, just predefined stats for every single slot of a specific job, and you activated those predefined stats by putting any piece of gear into that slot. Sounds kind of boring. And that's exactly how Bosja works. With one exception, you do get the haste from the gear. Oh, we're gonna have to talk about haste, aren't we? Okay, so haste is one of those things that, it's always a net gain to have haste. It is never wrong to have a faster GCD. It's the opportunity cost of what you sacrifice to get the haste. This isn't really a big deal in Bosja because the haste is essentially free, and you just have to correct your rotation around it. Maybe that means you're going to hold a long cooldown like, Summoner's Bahamut that scales off of the GCD, just so that you know you will have it aligned with raid buffs, or maybe you use it in extra time for extra uses. Either way, you're going to get more casts in your burst when you have haste. Haste is awesome. It's almost always a DPS gain. Well, no, it is always a DPS gain to have haste if you're not trading anything for it. Now, in Eureka, you do trade a little bit for it, but you get so much haste for the slots, it's just like you trade like a ring and a, earring and your GCDs reduced by 6%, which is applied before your speed, by the way, so it works in the best possible way. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. The Occult Crescent is content that is kind of for no one. It's Eureka, but worse in every way. It's shorter than Eureka. There is no economy around the action system like there is in Eureka, and to some that's a good thing. In general, it's probably a positive, but it means that because all of the rewards were recycled, there's not a huge economy around the Occult Crescent. Why is that? Well, Occult Crescent was rushed, and we know it was rushed. To paraphrase the streamer Arthars, there was, at the second FanFest, the gentleman in question touched base with Yoshi P, and Yoshi P said, we're working on it, but we don't have anything to present just yet. Now, I believe this is actually linked to the Criterion rewards for Dawn Trail being literally dog shit. Like, I've never seen more insulting rewards from this game than what Criterion Savage got at Dawn Trail. Why is that the case? Because they didn't want to make Criterion Savage. They weren't going to make it. But here's the thing. They promised that they would, and it's probably better they do that and not make Blue Mage than make Blue Mage and not make Criterion, because they promised them both, and more people definitely care about the Criterion. However, I'll be real surprised if we see anything involving a Criterion dungeon at the next FanFest, because it seems like a deliberate way to sunset it where people won't be as pissed because the rewards were so abysmal. I mean, they were bad in Endwalker. They were really bad. But then we got the same, slightly better reward from the final Endwalker Criterion as the reward for the Dawn Trail Criterion. That reward, for those of you that don't know, is an upgrade item for the Tome Weapon, the Augmented Tome Weapon, which is basically, it's like the second best weapon next to your Bis and the Finished Relic at the end of the expansion. What this item did was it changed the stats to be identical to the Savage Bis weapon and gave it a funny glowy effect. When I say they recycled the reward, they recycled that reward. It doesn't upgrade the current expansion Augmented Tome Weapon to be like the current Savage Bis. It upgrades the Endwalker best, well, not best in slot, but the best Endwalker eye-level Augmented Tome Weapon that you buy with Poetics to be the same stats as the final Endwalker Savage Bis weapon. They literally copy they just Control-C, Control-V, done. The point I'm trying to make is that the developers realized that Criterion was not what this game needed. The developers realized way too late that the evergreen content, the thing that will get people to play this game off patch, the thing that will get people to love this game and spend ridiculous, just no-life, poop sock hours into this game, is the exploration content. And the amount of pushback they got at the most recent FanFest when they didn't have anything on exploration shows it, and I think they understand that now. In conclusion, I and many, many other people that I know mostly just play this game to go into Eureka and to run the Baldesion Arsenal. If you're somebody that cleared it back in Stormblood, I really encourage you to come now, because you're not going to believe the shit that we're doing in there. You might not have the Echo, but I've still seen Absolute Virtue die in like 80 seconds. Like, we figured out how to really turn the dials up on the double edge. Occult Crescent is not going to replace that. I don't think that the second Fork Tower is going to replace BA for me. But I will tell you that the first time that I ran Fork Tower Blood, which was about 2.5, 3 weeks after it came out, when I got past the first boss and stepped into those hallways, it brought a tear to my eye. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that after 7 or 8 years of wanting a true sequel to BA, not just a hallway full of bosses with essentially pre-assigned actions by Creative Business Unit 3, like Deluprum, that I would get an actual sequel to BA. I didn't believe that it would ever happen, and I could tell immediately upon entering the Fork Tower that it was something special, and upon finishing it, I completely agree. If you're someone that does this content once and never comes back to it, that's fine. In fact, if you want to come into BA and get your awesome mount and leave, I will reserve you a spot in Support Fate for one of my runs. I will get you in there, you'll only see half of the raid, you can get your awesome mount and never come back. That's totally fine. This content is very special to us, and if you don't know why, again, I invite you to come along with us. I will absolutely get you into one of those runs. But this content is unique, it's different, it's special to us. There's nothing in the game quite like it, and that's what makes it so incredible, among a million other variables that we've already talked about. I don't think that Fork Tower Magic will be the type of raid like BA where I can just do nothing but this content for literal fucking years at a time and still find new things to do. The developers very obviously don't know why those of us that are in Eureka are out in Eureka. But they want to know. And they've demonstrated time and time again, this expansion, that they're trying to figure it out. And that means a lot to me and a lot of other people. And I'm really, really encouraged to see that. Even if they fail, to see them trying is more than I could have ever expected or asked for. So thank you. I know I just thanked the billion-dollar company. Shut the fuck up. When you put the raid into the zone, you are coming up with several principles before you do that. And these principles have to do with difficulty and the expectation of who's going to be in there doing what. An EX difficulty is something anybody can do. A Savage difficulty is something everybody can do, but I don't think it's something everybody can do all the time and consistently enjoy. So to give us a Castrum level raid alongside a BA level raid in the same zone at the same time, while being able to filter to go into the EX version or just showing up with randos and doing the normal version, is the absolute best of both worlds and is genuinely a genius idea from the development team at CBU3 that I would have never thought of. And frankly, if you had pitched that to me, I would have said something along the lines of, that's brilliant, they will never fucking do that. But they did. It has been many years. In fact, it's been so many years, I cannot believe the last time that I was genuinely, positively surprised by the developers working on Final Fantasy XIV. But this did. And that's why the new Fork Tower entry method is brilliant. Thank you so much for watching. Come run BA with us sometime. Unless you play Ninja, or a tank that's not called Warrior, you'll have a good time. See ya.